this is Gina, and I am super excited to share my presentation with you on what I learned in SPED 120. I just want to say welcome. We had a really wonderful semester together. I learned so much on how to make our future classroom more inclusive for our SPED students, you know, how to make it a more welcoming environment, how to accommodate student needs. And I would say this whole class definitely changed my thinking on how we teach SPED students, and any student with disability. Um, I can't wait to share some of what we learned today. So the first thing that really stood out to me was our diorama of an IEP project. On a practical level, it was super helpful to me because Um, I got to learn the ins and outs of how to request an IEP meeting, what to write in an IEP, who's in an IEP meeting. And obviously, as a future, I'm going to be a general education elementary teacher, but as a future gen ed teacher, like those are important things to know. Um, it also taught me the value of relationships. We are a team. The principal, the SPED teacher, gen ed teacher, psychologist, vice principal, everyone on that team. We need to work together and to listen to each other and collaborate. And forming those relationships is crucial. Talking to them about things that you don't understand. Oh, and especially the parents. I can't emphasize that enough. And we'll talk about that more later. But yeah, it's only an IEP is only successful if everyone works together, and therefore the student is only successful when we work together. Um, I also really loved that we talked about least restrictive environment. Um, our students are often so much more capable than we think they are, and I will also be talking about that later too. And it was just important that we're moving towards inclusion, and that kind of changed my mindset because I sort of struggled with the idea of if they need the supports, can they do everything the other kids can do? And I'm ashamed that I thought that way, but I did. And the answer is definitively yes. And it's important to include them in all of what everyone else gets to do in the class. So I love that we talked about that and that they get to feel a part of the campus environment. My second artifact was our interview with Rowena Clark. And let me tell you, I think that might have been one of the most impactful things we talked about. I was so in awe of her and inspired by her, and I learned so much. She is a mom of children with special needs, and she taught us so much about how to advocate for your kid, how to, you know, she gave us resources, basically. She was wonderful about sending us resources she felt would be helpful to us in our careers as general education teachers of how can we best advocate for our SPED students, what does the law say? She had a ton of resources to give us, which was super amazing. Um, I think the most important thing I learned from her is just the idea that no one knows a child better than their parents. I think there's this tension sometimes between teachers and parents of like, ugh, she's just being a helicopter mom. And sometimes it can feel that way. But ultimately, the parents are always going to do what's in the best interest in the child. And they know the child, in theory, best. So they have so much wisdom to bring. So instead of fighting with them or the tension, taking the opportunity to slow down and really listen to their input is crucial. And I loved that she talked about that. My third artifact was my teacher interview with Mitchell Richardson. Again, super duper impactful to me. Um, he talked a lot about building relationships, like relationships between the SPED teacher and the general ed teacher, for example. He suggested to really get to know them, to have good communication, get them coffee and sit down and collaborate and share ideas. I, in my own life, have experienced, in my own career, have experienced tension between, gen ed teachers and SPED teachers, but there is magic that happens. Like, the kids' ultimate success is when they work together and they share ideas and they're on the same page. So, to not be afraid to form those connections, to go out of your way to form those connections is crucial, not just for your success as a teacher, but ultimately for our students' success. The other thing he really emphasized that I loved was the idea of hold high standards. These kids are so much more capable than we give them credit for. Like I was saying, I'm ashamed that maybe initially I hadn't given them as much credit. Like, if they need this much support, can they do what everyone else can do? Well, yes. You know, they might need a little extra help, but that doesn't mean that they can't hold your standards. Like, don't be afraid to have high expectations and work with them to reach it, because they will only ever strive for what you think they can strive for? Um, so I loved that. Our students are so much more capable than we think they are, so we need to believe in them. Artifact 4 was the Special Olympic assignment. I really enjoyed this one too. We talked a lot about the different options that are available to students with special needs to compete. And I love this because as a society, we're working on being more inclusive. And again, just changing my stigma, changing the world's stigma of, well, if they need all these supports, they can't do it. Yes, they can. And I love the idea that these organizations emphasize that they're just as capable as any other student. Um, and the importance of community. Everyone needs community, especially students with special needs. Like, it's crucial to their success that they have community, they have friends, they have interests and hobbies, and this is a great way to get them involved and include them in the bigger scope of the community. And as a teacher, I love this assignment because it's just more resources to give to my parents and students? Um, but yeah, this was a wonderful, wonderful assignment, and I really enjoyed doing it. Okay, the last one, I know I say these are all impactful, but I think this one I say the best for last. This assignment had to do with what we learned from our observation hours. So I was with Miss Maya Lowe in her special needs pre-kindergarten class for deaf of hard of hearing students. I learned so much from her, more than I could from any textbook. What I really admired about Maya is how she really respected the students' boundaries. You know, she was the first to say, okay, if you need a break, that's okay. And she would never push something that she knew wasn't going to go well. She really was in tune with her kids' needs and supports. She also tried to make lessons fun for them. And I think sometimes we get so focused on IEP goals and all of that wonderful stuff that we forget that they're kids and this is supposed to be fun. So if she knew they loved dinosaurs, she would put a video with dinosaurs into her lessons, so they could learn dinosaur signs or math or reading, whatever they were talking about. Um, and I also loved how she interacted with the paraprofessionals in her life. Um, she was always their biggest cheerleader. She was the first to ask for help and suggestions on how to make it a better environment, her classroom a better environment. And I think the students fared better because all of their teachers were working together for their success? And like I've been saying, I think my biggest shift, she held them to high standards. She didn't, you know, have lower their expectations. She had high expectations of them, and she worked really hard with them to achieve that because she knew that they could do it. Um, and again, that's just been super impactful for me. I hope you learned something from my presentation. I hope it was helpful and just shows how much I enjoyed this class and how much I learned. Have a wonderful summer, and yeah, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.